Welcome back to the Bough Breaks podcast with your host, Alexis Lynn. Before we get started, I'm just going to tell you guys I'm not a therapist. You don't have to listen to anything I say. You don't have to do any of this shit. If you don't like it, I don't give a fuck. Just keep listening anyway, because, there is some good stuff in here, even though you're going to be stubborn. You're going to act like there's nothing in here for me. Yes, there is. In this episode, there's something in here for everybody, because we're talking about forgiveness, the do's and don'ts, and what it actually is. So stay tuned. So we're going to talk about forgiveness today, not the Instagram quote version, not the version that people use to shut you up when your anger makes them uncomfortable. Mom, Dad, I'm talking to you. We're talking about what forgiveness is supposed to mean, what it's often used to mean, and what it actually means. And if you're a trauma survivor, you especially need to stay tuned to the rest of this episode. If you've ever been told that you can't heal until you forgive, this episode is for you. Let's start with the most neutral definition that we have, the dictionary. So, forgiveness is usually defined as letting go of resentment or pardoning an offense. Sounds reasonable, clean, efficient. But here's the issue. The definition assumes something huge, that the harm was a single event between equals and that it ended. Trauma doesn't work like that. Okay, stick with me. Abuse isn't a misunderstanding. Neglect isn't an accident. And forgiveness was never designed to carry the weight of prolonged harm, prolonged power imbalance, or long-term being in survival mode for a long time. So the next version we have is the religious version. In many religious environments, forgiveness is framed as a moral requirement, a virtue. Sometimes it's even a condition for being considered good or whole or healed. You're told things like, forgive as God forgives you. That unforgiveness is bitterness. That forgiveness will set you free. But what's missing from those teachings is accountability, justice, safety. For a lot of survivors, religious forgiveness wasn't healing, it was coercion. It meant staying quiet. I talked about all of that in a previous episode called Don't Tell Anyone, talked about the secrets that we were expected to keep as children that didn't belong to us, that were not our responsibility, and removing the accountability from the actual person causing the harm. Forgiveness also meant staying accessible, staying in harm's reach. I was taught to turn the other cheek. What that meant is let the person do it again. Let them do it again. Let them do it over and over. That's not forgiveness, guys. That is obedience. Okay? Now, here's the mainstream version. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. Holding on to anger only hurts you. Let it go. But this version skips grief, and it pathologizes anger, and it subtly implies that if you're still upset, that you're choosing pain on purpose. Trauma survivors hear that and think, if I were healthier, I'd be over this. No. You're responding normally to something that never should have happened. Okay? You're responding normally to something that shouldn't have happened to you. Why is there something that needs to be forgiven in the first place? That should have never happened. When someone hurts you, how are they supposed to repay you? How are they supposed to make it better? So here's the part that some people don't like hearing. Forgiveness is not required in order to heal. It's not. And also, it's not the opposite of anger. You can forgive or not forgive and still have the same exact feelings you had. Could still hurt. There's still a wound that's there. When forgiveness happens authentically, if it even happens at all, it's usually a byproduct. It's not a goal that's obtainable that way. Sometimes healing happens without forgiveness, fully, completely. That's not bitterness. That's just honesty. For trauma survivors, forgiveness often looks nothing like what we were taught. It might look like letting go of the fantasy that they'll never understand what they did. They'll never understand the harm that they caused you. So sometimes you just have to, let go of that fantasy. My parents will never understand what they did, how they hurt me. They will never understand. Whether they want to understand or not, they never will. I have to let go of that idea that they will ever understand. I had to let go of that a long time ago. It can also look like, releasing yourself from blame. Why did I stay in that relationship so long? Stop that. You were doing your best to love someone and you got hurt. Things happened to you that shouldn't have happened to you. Forgiveness can also look like naming what has happened as wrong. What they did to you was wrong. And don't soften it. Don't add to the story. Don't make excuses. Don't say, oh, they did this, but, or they did this because. No, they did that to you. Period. End of story. They shouldn't have done that. They should have regulated themselves and they should have made better choices than to hurt you. Forgiveness. I'm going to get a happy voice when I say this one because this is all about what our show is about. It's about family estrangement. Forgiveness can look like choosing distance instead of reconciliation. I chose distance because my family didn't want to reconciliate. They didn't want to address the problem. They wanted to pretend like the problem never existed. They wanted to pretend like I made up my own problems. I made up my own problems and gave myself so much trauma that I ended up in 13 years of therapy. Right. Because I was so bored as a child. Such bullshit. They don't want to take responsibility because they're narcissistic. So anyway, moving on from that, I chose distance because I knew that reconciliation wasn't a possibility. Not that I didn't want it. But you can choose distance instead of wanting you don't have to reconcile even. Forgiveness can look like allowing yourself to be angry without being ashamed of it, which is what I've been working on. Not being ashamed of my anger. I was taught that anger was a bad emotion. It was a negative emotion. It was a harmful emotion. And I was taught that it was evil. But that's not right. Anger teaches us things, doesn't it? Teaches us that something happened that was wrong. Something went wrong. Hello? It's an alert. We'll talk about that in another episode. Little red alert. Um, Sometimes forgiveness just doesn't happen at all. Sometimes the most ethical and self respecting choice is non forgiveness with boundaries. You don't owe forgiveness to people who never took responsibility. You don't owe forgiveness to people who benefited from your silence. You don't owe forgiveness to people who continued the harm or demanded forgiveness from you instead of change. Forgiveness isn't a virtue test. It's not a healing milestone, and it's not proof that you've moved on. Healing is about agency. If forgiveness restores your power, you get to explore that. If forgiveness does that for you, take that. But if withholding forgiveness protects your nervous system, that is also healing. You're not behind, you're not broken, and your anger is not a moral failure. You don't owe absolution to people who broke you. If this episode resonated with you, you're not alone, even if it feels like you are. Share this episode with someone who's been pressured to forgive before they felt safe. And as always, thank you for listening to When the Bough Breaks podcast. This is Alexis Lynn. If you'd like to be a guest, email us, wtbbpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our website, wtbbpod.com. You can like, subscribe, share. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. And Alexis Lynn has a YouTube channel out, guys, with some episodes that you can watch, including guest spots from me and some other extra goodies. So stay tuned for more episodes of When the Bough Breaks. Happy New Year, everyone.